Hi, it's Dave Graney here with John on 3SER 97.7.
We're going to go sort of chronologically through your career tonight.
Torture.
Yeah. Bit like This Is Your Life, isn't it? We'll start off at the beginning. Before the murder scene, there was a band called the Sputniks, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Tell us a bit about them.
Sure, that was... I won't name everybody else that was in it. I must have been... God, I was very young, about 18, I guess. I look back on it, I was living in Adelaide. I lived in Adelaide for about 18 months. That's not a... I look back on it, it was a pretty awful time. I don't know why we ever did a lot of gigs or whatever. We just wanted to play lots, I guess, you know. We used to do the strangest collection of songs, like we did a Wire song called Ex-Lion Tamer. We'd do a Blondie song. We'd do like Aretha Franklin songs and Sweet Soul Music. And I would change the lyrics to, in Sweet Soul Music, he lists all the soul singers. And I used to list the fighters that Johnny Famchon and Lionel Rose beat.
Rocky Gadolari. And
yeah. And I had a really weedy little voice like Pete Shelley out of the Buzzcocks kind of. It's horrible.
yeah.
It was horrible because it's awful when you want to be a musician and you got big ideas and you can't do it. You know? You can't put into play anything you want to do. You know? Takes a while. Either takes, you know, people being really lucky and being able to play together, you know, quite easily, or you know, and being encouraged by different people, or you just have to learn how to play, I guess.
Right. The records have the Murders as being formed in Mount Gambier. Pretty well, right?
It's a bit of mythology. Yeah.
Is it?
That's myself and Steve Miller came from Mount.
So they never played in Mount Gambier at all?
Yeah, the Murders played in Mount Gambier a couple of times.
Did they?
Mount Gambier is about 300 miles from Melbourne down towards on the border of South Australia. It's 300 miles to Melbourne, 300 miles to Adelaide. It's about 20,000 people. It's kind of weird, isolated place. There's no reason to go there. It's pretty violent. And, I mean, violent like any kind of isolated place is, because people just turn in on each other, I guess. Robert Helpman, Adam Lindsay Gordon, and me come from there.
Oh,
we played there a couple of times. I don't know. I just always would get really drunk. One of those shows was like Metallic KO, I guess. You know, the last show the Murders did there. I played there in a couple of years ago with Rod Hayward. He plays guitar in the Coral Snakes in a front bar of this pub. It was, you know, it was quite good fun. It was the most fun gig I've ever done. You know, it's all these guys with their beards and wraparound shades and big knives in the back of their belts and black t-shirts and tats, and that they just all had their backs to us and stuff. You know, a couple of hundred people.
Good family venue by the sounds of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the general look of people around that area. And, you know, nobody's listening, so.
Yeah.
I grew up there when I was. I remember. Sort of, there was a football club there, the South Gambier Football Club, where lots of groups would come through, you know, like AC/DC and I think even Billy Thorpe. I remember the Dingoes coming to town and playing in a theatre, and you know, I'd go to see them. You know. It was much more. That seems to be, that was a pretty lively era. I think when Mushroom Records first started up. I remember there was quite a couple of package tours that came around that part of the world. So I think Madder Lake were one of the first big Mushroom acts. And, I think they all, most of them came from around near Warrnambool. So they were, Warrnambool and around near there is quite a lively area, much more so than Mount Gambier. There's lots of comparatively, you know, large, you know, little villages. You know, people get around a lot more in a place. Mount Gambier it's not so much interaction of different little villages. And me and my friends, we all We all liked music a lot. I remember living there, and I used to send away. I'd go down to the record store to when the Sex Pistols were around. I used to go and order. Every record they put out was an event, and it was a big part of. It made me, very excited. Gave me something to latch onto other than being into music was something. Something other than being stoned, something other than being drunk, just something other than being messed up, which is all there was. That's all there was. That when you're a teenager, you're so messed up. Girls are pretty mysterious, and you feel powerless. Around girls when you're just around puberty, and it's a terrifying time to be a girl and to be a boy. Anyway, you feel messed up and you want something that'll make you stronger, and sometimes, if you can play the part of a successful part, if people like you, if you're a messed up sort of pillhead, whatever, you'll play the part, if something else doesn't come along. I used to go down to the record store, and I would be there to order, I had, the Sex Pistols' God Save the Queen on order on Wizard Records that came out in Australia, and the guy in the record store hated me. It was a big. He would say, Sex Pistols, they're heroin addicts, and I'd say, oh, that's all right. I like their music. So it was quite a big identification thing for me. And I remember I had Holidays in the Sun on order, and it took a while for them to be released in Australia. And he was saying they've broken up, and I was saying they have with glee. Yeah, so it was mainly punk rock that really gave me an idea of, ideas, and trying to articulate things, And of course, we were talking about the Sputniks, and I was hopeless. All I was a horny teenager.
On the Murders, did you have a particular sound in mind, and that you wanted for the band? Do you reckon you achieved what you wanted?
No. Or perhaps we did. Yeah, the Murders were like a real band. Mainly we were around St Kilda. It was all groups have their mythology. They say we're like Rose Tattoo had their mythology. Bad boys. Bad, and AC/DC had it. And all of the Cold Chisel had it. The Birthday Party had it. The Birthday Party were driven, from by some idea. They were they changed so quickly. The Birthday Party, they were amazing to see them change. But they just wanted to move and be away from themselves so much. They wanted to change into different people. The Murders were in this world where in St Kilda, which is a kind of bohemian kind of punk rock area at the time. I guess there was St Kilda and Fitzroy, and the shadow of the Birthday Party was quite large around it. And it was full of people with lots of, people barely out of their teens with, huge amount of mystery, very gaunt-looking girls, dressed in black, skinny girls, and, it's a veneer of drugged sophistication about them that was very exciting for me. And anyway, we were the Moodists, and we had a thing. Heroin was really big in that scene. It was all rich kids just slumming with heroin in this kind of area, St Kilda, which was exciting for them because it was, visible red light district, much more so than it is now. Prostitutes, all up and down Robe Street. Robe Street is like very genteel now. Anyway, it was rough and tough, and all these, art students loved it. Anyway, the Moodists had this thing. We lived in Eildon Road, Ackland Street. We had a house. More or less all lived in the same place. All we did was watch TV and drink beer. We had this mythology that we were very inarticulate, and we were up to a point, and that was what we were. Leather pants, no guitar solos, don't even hardly talk to each other, and that's what we were.
Right.
In Sydney, I mean, the first time we went to play in Sydney, people couldn't believe us. We were such we watched. We'd always watch the football on TV rather than go into a sound check or anything. In Sydney, we'd go to people's houses and watch we'd have to wipe the dust off the TV screen. That's what the Moodists were, all this mythology, and I guess the band called the Moodists ended in about '86. We're quite inarticulate and unself-conscious. Some of the music we did was pretty good.
Right. Well, we're going to hear some of it right now. Our special guest tonight, Dave Graney, who is tuned up and ready to play. You want to tell us what you're going to do for us?
Well, I usually play with Rod Hayward, who plays guitar better than me. So I'll play something simple. It's called You Need to Suffer. You need to suffer. You need to straighten out. You need to suffer. You need to straighten out. You're gonna kill yourself living the way you do. You need to suffer. You need to know what a good time is. You need to suffer. You need to suffer. You're always putting on other people's shoes. You're surrounded by lives you just want to walk into. You need to open up your eyes. You need to realize you've come to a lonely and still place. You've been blessed with a bad memory. None of your friends would ever remind you. Life's been very kind to you. You need to suffer. Oh, you need to suffer. You need to suffer. You need to suffer. You're a mean little person. Your mother never let you cry. The universe, what's in it for you? Planets move like they do. A distant cell on a stellar shore. Burns, rises, falls, assumes human form. You need to suffer. You need to suffer. You need to suffer.
Good. Basically, what was the story over in London with the Moodists? What actually happened over there?
Well, the birthday party around, they left Melbourne. I lived in Melbourne after the Boys Next Door had gone. I'd seen the Boys Next Door play in Adelaide and places like that. When we put out a record before that one we played, which was a bit more lively, and a member of the birthday party or something played it to a British journalist, and we'd never done any interviews or anything with anybody or anything, never had a live review or anything, and then it was single of the week in the NME, which was the biggest weekly music magazine in the world, really influential, and then the other two British magazines of the time both picked up on it, and they were saying, Moodists are, going to be a hugely popular group, and then, and we were all living in this house in Tran, just, thinking, something good.
It's all happening, yeah.
We were still paying for our records to be made, and we put them out through a go-go. We did that EP, which we just played a song off of, and I rang up Rough Trade Records, and they put me under this fellow who came out to Australia, and he wanted us to record for them. He went over and recorded for them. We were terribly trendy for about 4 weeks.
Wow.
Flavour of the month.
It was very. It was like where there was a place for us to be. The birthday party had broken up, and there was a place for a hard rock group to be there. But I don't think the British are such a kind of. They still colonise everything, and they have to tame everything and say they discovered it. And these people for a while felt good that they'd discovered these poor backward Australians that had been ignored in their own country, and we were seduced by this idea too, I guess. But it was a terribly gothic scene. If I could go back in time, you would be amazed by the gothicness of it. And at the time, I don't know, we weren't at all gothic. Not at all. Eventually, we just completely isolated.
And called it quits.
Yeah. We came back to Australia briefly in 1985. This is in most of 1984. We were in Britain. Came back here for 6 months. Didn't get much of a feeling here, so we went back to Britain. And then another record came out called Double Love, which was probably the most hard rock thing we did, and it was, I'd like to release some of it on CD sometime, but it's very difficult to locate all this stuff.
So what actually did you do in between time with the Bermudists and forming the Coral Snakes?
I think the Bermudists were going until about 1986. The last gig we did was in a place, this George Roby, this pub rock place in London, and it was myself, Steve Miller, and Claire Moore, and there was a bass player, David McClymont, and Malcolm Ross, who were both from a Scottish band called Orange Juice, who were playing with us. We had Louise Elliott on saxophone, who played on Ed Cooper's last tour and was in the Laughing Clowns, and a fellow called Mark Fitzgibbon, who plays jazz around Melbourne, on piano. And we're all wearing Hawaiian shirts, and I had a red velvet suit on, open to the waist, with a frilly shirt and a huge golden medallion. But and still, we were just we couldn't make contact with anybody. London is a total media orientated place, and there's no second acts in pop lives there. Nothing really real happens there. So I just sat around. I'd gone to London with a one-way ticket and about $50 in my pocket. I didn't have any money. I had to get a job. Eventually got enough money to come back to Australia. I did a few gigs with the Coral Snakes, and I did an EP called With the Coral Snakes at Stone Beach, and I got involved with Fire Records. Yeah.
Which we're about to play a track from, actually.
I guess, like what I was talking about, the Moose, was they were mainly known for this kind of hard rock stuff that we did. And then towards the end, I'd started writing songs a lot more. Before then, it was more of a group kind of thing where everybody, just didn't jam, but would just do little bits and arrange a thing all together. But after that, like that song we were playing it in the last days of the Nudists. It was more stuff that I would write and arrange the whole way through. And of course, I can't play drums or bass, but I would write the chords and the melody line and everything, and just say, here's the bridge here, and just start to finish. Set out the song. It was more, I was very uncomfortable all the time in the Moodists, I guess, as being a lead singer. All you can be is somebody like Jim Morrison or something, is all acting for me. But I was immediately really excited by the prospect of being a singer-songwriter, doing this kind of music, and I was really hot to trot, and I thought I was the only one doing it in the world. And I was very, very excited, and I thought, I was really, really happy. And Coral Snakes, you know, everything I've done with Claire Moore. It's not like I'm an artist like a singer-songwriter, like a brooding type like James Taylor or Dave Steele who plays around, you know, a fella who just goes around with the acoustic guitar, you know, a lonely kind of guy by himself, you know. I've always played with musicians who really, this is post the Moodists, and Claire Moore was in the Moodists, who have very empathise with my stuff very well, you know, and I can quickly, you know, have this, you know, understanding. Rod Hayward is the same, and all the bass players I've played with, you know, nothing is done in isolation, you know. I write the songs, but they can really quickly get to the heart of it and do it, you know. But it's mainly in the Coral Snakes is, you know, when I was in the Moodists, I was the lead singer of this, you know, aggressive group, you know. All I could be is put on a pair of leather pants, drink a lot of beer, and just be. And the music was very aggressive, you know, so I couldn't walk out of that thing, you know. I couldn't stop, even if I was happy. I couldn't stop a show, you know, because, you know, it was a band, you know. With the Coral Snakes, I set the limitations, and, you know, it was all my fault, and I said to the band, you know, this is all my fault, you know. You can relax, you know. I'm going to take it all, you know. I'm going to take this show, and all you have to do, you don't have to sell anything. I'm going to sell it. And you just relax and have a good time and enjoy the ride. And that's what it was.
But they have
First Coral Snakes shows in Melbourne. White Buffaloes ones. It's like we do a lot of different songs, different kind of atmospheres, and if you were just doing it, it'd be a very jarring kind of show. You know, so I started doing lots of talking and telling stories and stuff, and just being, you know, just getting this personality that would hold it all together, and, you know, dictating the pace of the show by, you know, how I felt kind of thing, you know, and telling stories and relaxing the band and everybody. So it turned out that kind of way. Eventually it turned into a pretty decadent thing where, you know, I was talking for lots and lots, you know. I'd go to Sydney sometimes and talk for half an hour, you know.
The UK experience changed Dave Graney at all? Did you come back a different person, or?
When I first went there?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first went there, you know, yeah. I don't know. I guess it did. When I came back, finally, after more or less 5 years being there, you know, I'd lived and worked in London. It's just such a brutal place. It's smaller in size than Melbourne, but you know, much bigger population, and it's like all being in a wartime kind of situation. I was so beaten down, and it was so black and closed in around me, and then I didn't have any money. I flew into Sydney, and it looked great, you know. Got a cab ride to a friend's place, and then got a train to Melbourne, to some friends, and then I went to Macambia, and it was pretty eye-opening for me. This is all in the space of about a week or so. The journey out of Britain for me was like very much, you know, the end of an era, you know, very traumatic for me. Kind of. The Coral Snakes EP had just come out, and I was very happy with the band, and I thought, you know, I was going to be you know, making big noise, and then I was more or less deported from Britain, you know. So I had to go back to Australia. I had to, or go into a prison hulk. So I didn't want to do that. So came out of Britain. I said, "Oh shit, no." So I'll have to go. No, I'm going. See you. You know, so the Moodists always had a thing, you know, and people in that kind of post-punk kind of thing had this way of doing things that were, you know, that were easier and bigger and better, and you didn't have to go and tour everywhere like Dragon or whatever, you know. I always had this easy way, you know. For some people it works, you know. The Saints, for instance, couldn't get a gig in Brisbane in 1976, so they made their own record, and they went to London. You know, they did it first. You know, the Saints were equally much more successful in Britain initially, but they were rejected by the British for the way they looked. Radio Birdman had to go overseas. The boys next door went overseas. Ollie Olsen from Whirly World, and now in Max Q and Third Eye kind of things. He'd had to do it, so you know. The Laughing Clowns were going over there. You know, it was a thing that you had to do. Yeah, just seemed to be the thing to do. You know.
He's ready. No, not now.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, he's ready. Great.
When I was a young man, I learned not to care. Off whiskey and from it, I often did swear. My parents, they warned me about drinking's case, but the fate of the baby was many times worse. It's real, Lord, it's real, one more time. It's real, Lord, it's real, one more time. Stay away from the pool halls and the taverns in the town. Stay away from the men pushing that codeine around. Stay away from the stores where the remedies you'll find. Much better your fate than be caught on codeine. It's real, Lord, it's real, one more time. It's real, Lord, it's real, one more time. My belly is craving, I got a shake in my head. I feel like I'm dying, I wish I was dead. If I live till tomorrow, that'll be a long time. I'll reel and I'll fall and I'll die on codeine. It's real, Lord, it's real, one more time. It's real, Lord, it's real, one more time. You forget about women, you'll forget about men. You'll try just once, and you try it again. You forget about life, you'll forget about time, and end all your days a slave to codeine. It's real, Lord, it's real, one more time. It's real, Lord, it's real, one more time. It's real, Lord, it's real, one more time. Yeah, the sun will rise and fall on codeine.
Okay. How does Dave Graney go about writing a song?
I guess it's like most people, they have one big song, you know, like we were talking about. I had this thing about Custer, but I never wrote a real song about Custer. It was like a big feeling that I had, and I liked the idea and the imagery of this sort of famous event that nobody actually saw, and they had to ask these kind of the people who were there who killed the other people, you know, what happened. You know, they had to. It was quite a strange thing. And I liked this loud public event that was in darkness, and I wrote all these other songs from it. You because it was about, seemed to be for me, you know, like an image for lots of, you know, of, you know, quite, you know, different things, you know, like I talk about My Life on the Plains was a Custer book, you know, so I had this idea about Custer. There's no song called My Life on the Plains on there, it's just a little poem I wrote at the end of a Gene Clark song, In the Misty Morning, that it's about like a yearning kind of sensuality and kind of just, you know, just general kind of horniness, you know. So it's My Life on the Plains, you know. And I used to do all these shows and just tell all these jokes, you know, because I didn't ever want to lay a heavy trip on people. It was like, you know, and I had this thing, you know, and it developed into this long Darryl Braithwaite story that I had on this last live LP, and I used to ask this philosophical question of, you know, of if a buffalo has an erection out in the plain, does it really have an erection? Yeah, I think you can write songs about whatever you like, you know, and you should. You know. Some people, you know, I like people like Ray Davies. You know, Waterloo Sunset's a pretty amazing song. And if you ever go to Waterloo Station in London, it's just concrete and it smells of winos, and it's possible to walk across the road. It's a horrible, horrible place. And Waterloo Sunset just sounds so beautiful, and you know, paradise he mentions in the lyric.
It's not like that at all.
Certainly not. So I generally have one big song and I pull little things out of it. You know, I like to write songs about people. Like got a song about Warren Oates, the actor, because you know I was thinking a lot about Melbourne, and you know I think, you know, Warren Oates. You know, I thought, you know, where would Warren Oates be if he came to Melbourne? And I thought he'd eat at the Chat and Chew restaurant in Swanston Street, and he'd sit across from you with a severed head in an Airways bag. So, you know, that's Warren Oates, and he'd be around Spencer Street, you know. That was the kind of feeling I had. And I have a song about Ava Gardner called Magambo. I haven't recorded. I have a long song about being a musician like myself. It's called Night of the Wolverine, that I want to record on my next kind of record when I get to do that. After a while, I had to change it. I think the record I made after that, I was the hunter and I was the prey. It's like, you know, at the time I was bitterly, you know, disappointed that it took 2 years to come out, and it just drove me mad.
What was the story behind that? Why did it take so long?
Fire Records, who I made My Life on the Plains with, were tied up with Rough Trade Records, who went bankrupt.
Was it a refreshing change recording back home with the White Buffaloes album?
My Life on the Plains.
Yes.
The only thing is that studios in London are much more varied, and probably 50% cheaper, so you can spend much more time, and there's many more engineers, and they're very competitive, and they're very good. You don't spend half your time arguing with an engineer who knows what to do because he worked on the Southern Sons album, which is often the case. You know, everybody knows what to do in rock and roll. You know. You know, everybody's got an opinion on rock and roll. You know.
Right.
Well, I have a small audience in Melbourne and Sydney, and people want, you know, they like what we do. So I guess it's, you know, if you want to be brutal about show business, you join the tribute group, you know, and just have that brutal exchange, you know, and say, you know, here's the John Cougar Mellencamp show, gives you $15, and there it is, and everybody's happy, you know. That's like playing for your audience. Ultimately, you know, if you want to do something, you know, creative, you have to go out there and do it. So you have to do it for yourself, you know. I get a kick out of performing. It's good, you know. It's a bit like being an athlete or something. It's something simple kind of reward. It's good to play. Each song, it would bring everything else. All my records would be re-released, you know. If I had a hit song, I would be very happy, and it would make my music would make sense, I think, you know. Because I'm not a wallflower, you know. I'm not a guy who sits around picking fluff out of his navel, you know. And people saying, "Isn't that interesting?" You know. I'm a pretty active, aggressive kind of artist, and I'm rock hard, you know. And I want to kick a goal. Good.
What's your attitude to film clips and videos, the dreaded things?
Well, most people come into contact with things, you know. I'm sure Saturday morning video shows people come across music for the first time lots. I don't like them, you know. It's like everything is manufactured. Everything can be manufactured, like something like Sophie B. Hawkins' "Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover." So much money spent on a video to make a woman look so much, just to make a woman look like she's dressed casually. She's dressed in jeans. She gets down on all fours and licks the floor. She's to look abandoned, like Janis Joplin or something. Janis Joplin, they wouldn't let her near a recording studio or whatever nowadays. That's, you know, I don't know whether that's good or bad, but so much money spent to fake something is just stupid, you know. They might as well just get a really good filmmaker and say, you know, go away, do something, you know. But there's so much trickery and lies involved, you know. It's like an advert or something. I don't like it. That's all the worst parts of modern music, you know. Fake and phony rock and roll. I like really good performers, and it's like all of Oliver Stone's millions that went into explaining, you know, the majesty of Jim Morrison. Never would have any of the power of a kid who would have heard break on through. You know, even people who, I don't know, Jim Morrison will end up as a meaningless icon like James Dean or Marilyn Monroe. You know, some stupid image that's on a mirror or something. You know, music is just pretty powerful by itself. I guess, you know, in rock clubs and discos is where people just hear disembodied voices and that nowadays. You know, videos, I don't like them at all.
Did do one though, didn't you?
Did one,
yeah.
I guess you have to do them, and I'd like to do. I think there'll eventually be a very popular group who will say no to all of that. You know, they won't make videos or have their photos taken. Maybe a couple of photos, you know, because hidden things are much more powerful, and things that are closed and you're not allowed to see are much more powerful than things like where you can see everything is revealed.
Madonna in bed.
And some work with Stephen Cummings recently. How'd that come about?
Well, I saw him on Rage one night, and he played that video clip of mine, and he said kind of complimentary things, and said he wanted to make a record of, you know, of stranger songs. And I rang him up the next day. I got his phone number from a mutual friend, and said, "You want some weird songs, you know? Perhaps we could write some together." We tried to do it, but, you know, in that Lennon and McCartney style, but, you know, it's pretty impossible for us. We collaborated on one bit by bit, and it was mainly a kind of thing, you know, like it was a story that I'd written, and I had most of the song, but Stephen Cummings is really good at arranging things to make you know, choruses, and that's really stand out, you know, and that's basically what he brought to it. He's really good at that kind of thing.
Right.
Write any songs like Motley Crue, you know, like Girls, Girls, Girls. I'm coming for you, you know, my love is like a tire iron kind of thing, you know. I write songs about, especially I Was the Hunter and I Was the Prey was supposed to be like a song cycle about really savage desire, like really, really wanting something. When you want somebody so much that it makes you feel vulnerable, you feel weak, and you feel angry for being powerless, that's all what desire and that is to me. It's not like I'm hunting for you, baby, kind of thing, like somebody who's closed and hard. That's not what sexuality or desire is about. It's about losing yourself, in the arms, the eyes of another, losing control of yourself. It's kind of a frightening thing. So I don't know. I'm not that kind of that lone gun kind of guy like that. I feel very isolated in Australian music, although there are others that I feel a kinship with, who I know have equally, I could sit around with them and complain all night, There's people like Kim Salmon, who has Kim Salmon and the Surrealists, and his other band STM. I think he's really out on his own. He's great. There's nobody like him. I'm really glad to see the Cruel Sea getting rapid success. I like that kind of thing. There's a friend of mine, Peter Milton Walsh in Sydney, who hopefully will put out a record with his band The Apartments next year. He's my favourite songwriter in the world. There's Charlie Marshall in Melbourne. Quite a few musicians, all of them kind of loners and people by themselves, I guess, and all of them derive some kind of power from saying, I'm alone, I'm the only one that can do this, and they get their kind of power from being that way, by taunting the world, kind of. Don't want to be too much like it.
Friday, the last time I had managed to see you live was quite a few months ago, the night you supported Bob Dylan.
Oh, yeah.
How was that?
I never met him at all.
Didn't you?
No. He didn't associate with his band or anything. He had a little fellow called Caesar who tuned his guitars up and everything. He didn't sound check with them or anything, and they spent most of the sound check making fun of him doing Bob Dylan impressions.
Yes.
which Bob Dylan is another famous person. He's strange. He's been famous since he's been in the music business for over 30 years. You have to reclaim some part of your life. There's people who are at fame on the other side of fame. And people say he's inscrutable. He doesn't owe an explanation to anybody. People were yelling out at that concert, Bob, I was there in 65, There's no way he could have satisfied any of his audience. It was quite a strange audience. And, I don't know, he's so isolated from everything, But, he's just trying to protect himself, even from his band. He obviously doesn't talk to them or anything.
Talking up here before about your next record, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing this one. Stephen Cummings is going to produce it, and I've been rehearsing it and playing it for about a year. Like at that show with Bob Dylan, I'd do it without a bass player. It was two acoustic guitars, some drums with brushes, and a piano, and a lot of harmonies, and it's and some violin. And I do some shows as it. Sometimes it's Dave Graney, the soft and sexy sound. And so I do play different songs, and it's all the songs I'm just learning to play in this closer way, and in keeping songs as they are when I write them on an acoustic guitar. So it's much simpler, and it's harder to play to be so restrained. So yeah, I've got all the songs together. It's called, it would be called Night of the Wolverine. And it's a long song complaining about being a show business of mine with Night of the Wolverine. It should go for about 10 or 15 minutes or so.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Recorded in December.
Yeah. I want to do it in like 7 days, maybe less. For some reason, records take a long time to make nowadays.